The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
Hare Krishna, Mother Saradiya. Hare Krishna, can you hear me? You're muted, Mataji, you're muted.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I can hear you, and hopefully you can now also hear me too.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear me clearly, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I'll play proper some Jarad Madhav. Then after that, we can start the class, okay?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, you're welcome. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So you're welcome, Mother. You have the floor now. If you so wish, I can put the test up, or you want to recite prayers first. Which,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for inviting me again. I feel very honored to be
Mother,
here.
your voice is not coming out.
Oh, it's so weird. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's still very low.
Ooh, okay.
It's
I'm gonna
clear,
speak.
Prabhu.
I'm looking at my sound settings, and it's the volume is on its highest. So I don't know what more I can do. Can you hear me better now?
Prabhu can hear you.
You can. Is it loud enough?
Okay, it's good. It's okay now.
All right. Okay. I'll just keep the microphone
So
very
I'll put the
close.
verse up.
Okay. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you so much for being here. Again, I see Ojas Visham Prabhu with, I think, at least 2 other devotees, and Nita, Lakshana, Devi Dasi, Bhakta George, Constantia, Sadev, my friend Eklis from Estonia. Thank you so much for being here. It's your work day. Loka Devi, and then Mirage, my father is here, Brajak Acharya Maharaj, and then Ganga Prasad Prabhu, and also Narayani Devidasi, and our friend Kush, all the way from India. So thank you all for being here, and please pray for me that I can say something meaningful and be Krishna's instrument this morning. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which I like, which says that if you remember Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even a blind man can see, a lame man can cover mountains, a dumb man can recite poetry. So I definitely fall in that category of not being so qualified, but maybe by the mercy of the Vaishnavas and the mercy of my Guru, I can say something meaningful. All right, so we are in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 42. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrita Naram Chavai Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vasyam Tato Jamam Udiryate. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Nara, Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nashta preyusa abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtagi. By regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Transcendental songs, is destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of God, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Right, so now our very beautiful verse for today, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.42. Tvavimen anaya vishaya matir madhupata ashakrit ratim udavahatat adda gangevogam udanvati. So if I remember correctly, we also give the attending Vaishnavas opportunity to chant the verse. So if anyone would like to join us, or anyone would like to recite the verse, you're very welcome to do so.
Vaime nanya visaya maltu madhu pate sakrit ratim udva attad abba gange valgam udamvati. So if anyone wants to chant, you can do.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Vaime ananya visaya mati madhupate sakrit ratimudva hattad ada gange vogam udavati.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would still like to recite the verse? All right, so we'll continue with the word for word translation. Okay. Please recite if you feel inspired to.
Tvaimenanya vishaya mati madhvate nati mudvahata tadha gange vogham udanvati.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kush, for representing the ladies and chanting the verse. So if there's no one else who wants to recite the verse, but continue with the word by word translation. Twavi, unto me, me, my, ananya vishaya, unalloyed, matihi, attention, madhu pate, O Lord of Madhu, ashakriti, continuously, ratim, attraction, udha vata, my overflow, adda, directly, Ganga, the Ganges, Eva like, Ogam, flows, Udanvati, down to the sea. Translation. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affection does not mean complete negation of the finer elements like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated. But in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord in place of desire for sense gratification. So-called affection for family, society, country, etc., consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, we can see that Arjuna desired not to fight with his brothers and relations just to satisfy his own personal desires. But when he heard the message of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he changed his decision and served the Lord. And for his doing so, he became a famous devotee of the Lord. For it is declared in all scriptures that Arjuna attained spiritual perfection by devotional service to the Lord in friendship. The fighting was there, the friendship was there, Arjuna was there, and Krishna was there. But Arjuna became a different person by devotional service. Therefore, the prayers of Kunti are also indicate the same categorical change in activities. Srimati Kunti wanted to serve the Lord without diversion, and that was her prayer. This unalloyed devotion is the ultimate goal of life. Our attention is usually diverted to the service of something which is non-godly or not in the program of the Lord. when the program is changed into the service of the Lord, that is to say, when the senses are purified in relation with the service of the Lord, it's called pure, unalloyed devotional service. Srimati Kunti Devi wanted that perfection and prayed for it from the Lord. Her affection for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis is not out of the range of devotional service, because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord, but here the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relation. This tie of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. Relations of the soul, established in relation with the supersoul, are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the medium of the relation with the supersoul. Seen in darkness is not seen, but seen by light of the sun means to see the sun and everything else which was unseen in darkness. That is the way of devotional service. So I think a very beautiful verse and accompanying very beautiful purport, definitely very inspiring to me. And I think there's so many beautiful points we can take from it. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshuran Malitanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhuttale Swayam Rupa Kadam Madhyam Dadati Swam Pantantatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakadalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrayatam Sahagana Raghunath Tanvitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karina Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Taptata Kancha Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhani Stuta Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Triubhiksha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So where we currently find ourselves in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, 8th chapter, it is the chapter is actually called the prayers of Queen Kunti. Well, that's part of the name of the chapter. So I thought we can begin by just meditating on this limb of devotional service, Vandanam, which means offering prayers. So our process, we've got 9 main processes in devotional service, and it's Shravanam, Kirtam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, and Vandanam. So Vandanam means offering prayers, and in Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse number 23 to 24, Prabhupada writes, Vandanam, although prayers are a part of deity worship, they may be considered separately, like the other items, such as hearing and chanting, and therefore separate statements are given herewith. The Lord has unlimited transcendental qualities and opulences. One who feels influenced by the Lord's qualities in various activities offer prayers to the Lord, and this way he becomes successful. So I found a beautiful verse from Sri Kavi Rath, which I think gives us encouragement for why we should also make prayers part of our daily lives. So he writes, one who daily sings the glories of Yashoda's son Krishna, who are cooling as sandalwood and camphor, is not troubled by the days of Kali Yuga. For him at every step there is a torrential flood of sweetness. So I'm sure we've all been troubled by the challenges of Kali Yuga, but here we are reminded that if we daily remember Krishna as the son of Yashoda, we will have a torrential flood of sweetness at every step. So I wanted to also share further Prabhupada writing about prayer. He says prayer means vandanam. So this is also service. Either you take all the 9 different items or you take some of them, or at least you take one of them. Then you will make progress in spiritual life. So some of them offer prayers, just like Christians and Mohammedans, they offer prayers. So it is as good as the Hindus who give service in the temple, decorating the deity, cleansing the temple and offering food. In this way they are engaged. So by this devotional service, one makes progress in spiritual life, and when he is sincere in his service, then God is within him, and he takes charge of him and gives him instruction how quickly and swiftly he can approach God. So that is a fact. He is not hankering after our service. He is complete in himself. He does not require anyone's service. But if we offer service to him, then we will become purified, completely purified. We can talk with God. We can see God. We can take his instruction. As Arjuna is talking with God, personally taking his instruction and acting according to his instruction. So I find that this is very encouraging to me to think that of the 9 process of devotional service, even if we would just practice prayer, we could also attain perfection and purification, because I feel that prayer along with the chanting of the holy name is something we can do in any circumstance, while we're traveling, while we're away from home, while we're working, while we engage in other activities. We can still engage the mind in prayer. Then what I think is significant about this prayer, which Prabhupada also highlights in his purports, is that what is Queen Kunti praying for? She is praying for pure, unalloyed devotional service. So it is said that it is very beneficial if we also recite the prayers of the previous acharyas, because they know how to pray and they also know what to pray for. But it's also good if we can write and recite our own prayers to the Lord, but then we should keep this in mind, that the ultimate goal of prayer is always to ask Krishna, to petition Krishna to give us pure devotional service. So pure devotional service has certain qualities, and certain of the qualities is that pure devotional service needs to be uninterrupted, and pure devotional service needs to be void of all karma and all jnana. So it means devoid of any other desire except to serve Krishna. And we know that this pure devotional service will bring relief for us from all the types of distress. We also know that it creates all auspiciousness and it brings transcendental pleasure. We know it is rarely achieved, and we also know that it's the only means to attract Krishna. So Krishna is the all-attractive, but pure devotional service can even attract Krishna because it's Krishna's internal potency. So that is why in our prayers, that is what we want to express and hanker for, is this pure devotional service. So Prabhupada writes, one should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain, without fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. This is called pure devotional service. So in this prayer, which Queen Kunti is expressing her desire for pure devotional service, she's using a very beautiful analogy. And I find this is very interesting in our tradition in Krishna consciousness. We find that throughout the Bhagavatam, devotees uses analogy, and Prabhupada also often used analogies when he was teaching. And I think analogies are very powerful because when we have an analogy, it's something that we can also visualize within the mind. It's something that we might have seen or we have some knowledge of, so we can meditate upon it very deeply. And it's also sometimes something that we can actually have a emotional connection with. And the more of our faculties, we engage when we are thinking about something, the greater are the chances we are going to remember it. So I want to invite you to also meditate a bit deeper on this beautiful analogy that Queen Kunti is giving us in this verse. So the analogy that she is giving is she is comparing her desire to the Ganges. She says, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Now, I think it is very significant that she uses this analogy of a river, and then even more significant that she uses this analogy of the Ganges River. So those of you that might have studied a little bit of geography at school, you might remember that when it comes to the water cycle of the earth, it's called a closed system. So it is interesting that it's explained that the origin of all rivers are actually the ocean, because we have clouds forming predominantly above the ocean. Clouds form by drawing up, or the sun draws up water from the ocean. Clouds form, and then the clouds move into the land and it rains, and that is the source of water supply and the source of rivers. And then the rivers flow back again to the ocean. So it's interesting, we see that rivers, it's like this source to source connection. A river indirectly came from the ocean, but a river will also again flow back into the ocean. And we can see that that is the same way, that is similar to our condition. We are originating from Krishna. The soul is originally also coming from the spiritual world. And now, in this lifetime, our goal is again to reach Krishna. But our goal, and I think this is very important for us to always remember, our goal is for each and every soul, the goal that we are trying to achieve is inherent to who we are. It's not like a goal that we search for externally from ourselves. It's not a goal that someone has given to us. It's not a goal that we can somehow, find in a book. But it's a goal that is directly connected to who we are. And it's like an unavoidable goal. Like a river can only end up ultimately flowing to the ocean. There's nowhere else. A river could only come from the ocean, and a river would ultimately always go back to the ocean. So we can meditate upon that point. Like a river is like pulled toward the ocean. We are pulled towards Krishna. Loving Krishna in pure devotional service is our ultimate goal. Whether we are striving for it right now or not, that's another question. But that is absolutely what we are made to do, and that's what we are called to do. And now what is interesting about the Ganges is the Ganges, of course, is not an ordinary river. The Ganges is coming, from the lotus feet of Krishna. So again, she's saying, as the Ganges is pulled towards the ocean, let my desire be pulled towards you. Because the desire, even the desire that we have right now, originally that desire is also connected, and we are just now in the process of reconnecting it to Krishna. And those of you that know the Ganges and have seen the Ganges, you can meditate upon the Ganges. It is a very powerful river. It is a strong river, and it flows with quite a lot of energy. It has like a lot of motion moving toward. It's not like a little creek, that is kind of like just very slowly flowing. And hopefully one day we'll join a river, and hopefully one day get to the ocean. No, the Ganges flows with a lot of force. So she says the Ganges because she wants her desire to be so strong and to flow with full enthusiasm just towards the ocean. But if we take, this analogy further and we meditate upon the course that a river takes, as a river goes from its origin, I think the Ganges' origin is in the Himalayas in Prayag. It's quite a long journey before it reaches the ocean. And I think this is also interesting, because we can find that our journey back to Krishna might, even in this lifetime, feel quite long. Our journey back to Krishna might also feel like it's not very direct. If we look at the Ganges' flow, it's not like a straight line from the Himalayas, straight line on a map to the ocean. No, it's got turns and it bends and it passes many things. And in a similar way, we might find in our lives that although we want to be of Krishna, we don't achieve, pure devotional service immediately. It's going to take some time. And Prabhupada said that doesn't matter. We should have that ultimate goal in mind. We should know that, as the Ganges knows, I'm going towards the ocean. That is my destination. That is where I came from, and that is what I'm called to do. We should know that although I'm taking a route now in this lifetime, and while I'm on this route, I might be passing so many things, which is not the ocean. I might be seeing so many things on my riverbanks, which is not the ocean. Still, I need to continue to flow with full force towards the ocean, because that is my goal. And those of you that have visited India, you might also know that another thing that happens to the Ganges, and I think that's also something that we experience in our lives, is that unfortunately, of course, there's a lot of people that have great respect for the Ganges, and they offer the Ganges prayers, and they, actually do puja to the Ganges in many places. But we also know that unfortunately, there's a lot of people just dumping their refuge in the Ganges. There's a lot of pollution that happens to the Ganges. And similar in our lives, we can experience that we might come into contact situations, we might have interactions with people, and we might feel that, this is almost polluting us. This is not pure. This is not what I desire. But at the same time, we can remember, like the Ganges, miraculously always remains pure, and scientists have actually conducted tests, and they test the water of the Ganges just before it again reaches the ocean, and miraculously that water is pure, although it's polluted. Similarly, we can always remember that the soul is untouched, regardless of what difficulties we're going through, regardless of how crazy the world might get, regardless of the challenges we might face with interacting with others. Nothing can actually, change your soul, and nothing can change that relationship you have with Krishna, and nothing except you can in any way affect your bhakti. And I think that is something significant, because the Ganges, it gets so much things just dumped in it, and suddenly we might experience so many things are just dumped on us. It might feel like so many things are happening which we have no control over. And then we might feel that, this might stop my spiritual evolution. This might block my bhakti. This might prevent me from coming closer to Krishna or surrendering to Krishna. But we should remember, no, bhakti is transcendental. The soul is inherently pure. The process is inherently pure. So nothing can actually stop it. Like nothing can actually make the Ganges really polluted. The Ganges is always pure, in the same way we are always pure, and we will definitely reach our final destination. So I hope that is a meditation that will also inspire you. It really inspired me when I was thinking about this more deeply. Now, there was a prayer, as we're speaking about prayers, there was another prayer I wanted to share with you. I must just quickly get to my notes. So this is the prayer. I will become a servant of the son of Devaki. Because of my past karma, the path may be rough or smooth. But what is this to me? So as I said, now as the Ganges is flowing towards the Indian Ocean, it might be passing, beautiful places and forests and groves, and it might be even passing very grand buildings, but it might also be passing very degraded areas. It might be passing areas that have been really become destroyed, or there's been just really neglected. But ultimately it doesn't matter, because the Ganges knows what is its goal, and so it just keeps on flowing. So similarly, we might find in our life, because of so many things we've done, or just because of the state of the world, that sometimes it seems that situations are just favorable. Other times it seems that there is so much difficulty, but it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that we continue our devotional service, that we strengthen this identity of I am a servant of Krishna, I am a servant of the son of Devaki. So another prayer to inspire us there. O Lord Murari, during the beginning, the middle, and the end of all our days and nights, may you always remain the only goal of our lives. So if we meditate upon this very deeply, like, my goal is Krishna. We remember this in the middle and the end of our days and our nights. Then it becomes less and less important, what is happening. In any circumstance, we just remember what is our ultimate goal, and we pray to Krishna to give us intelligence that regardless of the circumstance, keep on moving towards that goal. So in Bhagavad Gita, it's said that the materialists, their intelligence is many-branched. They're trying to achieve so many things. They aspiring for so many ideals. They're desiring, to experience so many things, to have so many things, to be so many things. But for devotee, your desire is one. I want to serve Krishna. I want to be with Krishna. I want to be dear to Krishna. And that's it. And because that desire is one, we can trust that Krishna will give us the intelligence to always move towards that desire, regardless of what is happening. I don't know if someone accidentally unmuted their mic, or if someone wants to say something. I just heard some background noise. I'm not sure, but if anyone wants to say something, you're very welcome to do so.
Yeah, speaking to your
Otherwise,
you can go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhu?
I'm saying that I think it's just mistakenly on his voice, but it's off now.
Okay. So it was the devotees will hopefully join us later and make some valuable contributions. All right. So I just want to go back now to our purport. I feel this is a very beautiful purport. So in the first paragraph of the purport, I think Prabhupada writes about something very important. So he says, the perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And then he says, to cut off the tie of other affection does not mean completely negation the fire elements like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptom of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the object has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord, in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, and etc. consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it's called devotional service. So then Prabhupada also later on elaborates that, sorry, I'm just going to go back to the first paragraph. So I think this is a very important paragraph in which Prabhupada highlights the difference, what is the difference between jnana, the path of jnana, and the path of bhakti. So a very prominent element in the path of jnana is renunciation. So Prabhupada writes in one of the classes he gave about this specific verse, he says that, in general in the world we see like two strains. On the one hand, we've got people who are pursuing jnana, even though they might not understand the whole philosophy, but it's people who realize that, there's a lot of suffering in this world. And for that reason, there's a lot of suffering, and they also see that, whatever you work for, at the end, you just lose it all. So people who get to that understanding, they often just want to renounce. They don't want to have anything to do with the world. They often don't even want to really have anything to do with other people. And on the other hand, you've got people who, because the nature of the soul is to seek enjoyment, and because we can only find enjoyment in variety, they try, to make so many different arrangements to somehow enjoy their life, whether that is through their education, or whether that is through their business, or whether that is through their family, or whether that is through, fashion. We see people are desperately seeking enjoyment. But now the difference with the devotee is that he does neither, because Prabhupada says although renunciation is useful, although you have to, Prabhupada uses this word, you have to cut off your affection for this material world. You've got to cut off your attachment. You've got to cut off your desire. It's all like, it sounds very, because the soul is always wanting to desire. The soul is also wanting to enjoy, and the soul can only enjoy where there's variety. So therefore, Queen Kunti makes it very clear. She says, like, I want to be attracted only to you. So our process is not so much detaching, but attaching. And Prabhupada explains that, we cannot at the same time be pursuing material enjoyment and pursuing, our devotion to Krishna. So we've got to make a decision, and then we've got to shift. And the more we're going to increase our devotion to Krishna, increase our attachment, the more we naturally going to detach. But we're not going to detach, as Prabhupada said, from having any type of affection, any type of, care towards others. But what do we detach from? We detach from this idea that we are independently going to enjoy without Krishna. We are going to be independently pursuing our desires. We are going to be independently, be a little like king of our own little universe. So that is what we need to detach from. So I think it's very interesting how our process is not so much letting go, but it is one of connecting. We connect with Krishna, and then at the same time, as Prabhupada writes in the later purport, we connect with people, our environment, and everything around us in a new way. We start, like Prabhupada says, you start connecting soul to soul through the super soul. So we start relating to our whole life very differently. And also in a lecture Prabhupada gave on this verse, Prabhupada explained that the material world is actually a state of consciousness. So if we have the state of consciousness of being separate from Krishna, being disconnected from Krishna, being independent and pursuing that, we are in the material world. So material consciousness creates the material world. But Prabhupada said, even when we're here in the material world, if we become Krishna conscious, it's no longer the material world. It becomes the spiritual world. And I find that is very, very profound, because we often heard Prabhupada said, there is no love in the material world. But Prabhupada has now also said that the material world is a state of consciousness. So we can understand that there is no love in material consciousness. Because I cannot really love, say, my mother, if I don't really understand who she is. She isn't, my mother actually. She isn't her body. So if I love her as my mother only, if I love her only as, that person I have seen all my life, it's not really love, because it's going to end. And love is not supposed to have an end or a beginning. It's supposed to be unconditional. And it's supposed to be uninterrupted. So only if I can see her as part and parcel of Krishna, and the more I can understand that I am part and parcel of Krishna and she's part and part of Krishna, the more I can actually love her. So we can see, to the degree that we can develop spiritual consciousness, we can actually understand what is love, and we can actually love others. We can actually love ourselves, and we can actually love others, and we can expand that love. Because what I find also very interesting in this verse, Prabhupada mentions that actually the affection that Queen Kunti had for her family members, it wasn't outside of the realm of devotional service, because they were devotees. So he says that, it's like, if you love devotees, if you serve devotees, that's also devotional service, and her family members were all devotees. So why is she saying, cut this attachment that I have? And then Prabhupada says very clearly, but she was wanting to be relieved of the attachment to the skin. So it means, I love you, Arjuna, because you are my son. It's not, I love you, Arjuna, because you are, part and parcel of Krishna. So obviously Queen Kunti is at a very elevated state, and she realized that when we love people, but it's based on an external reality, it ultimately it binds us, and it's a blockage for us to get to Krishna. And I was meditating upon this, like, why is this a problem? Why is, relating to people on the base of their skin, and Prabhupada calls this the skin disease, why is it so problematic? And when I thought about this, I remembered I once actually a couple of times, not once, a couple of times visited a place in Cape Town called the Holocaust Museum, which is dedicated to help people, remember what is considered one of the crimes against humanity, and that was the Holocaust, in which many millions of people were killed. And one day when I was there was a scholar who explained that behind any any human action, there's a philosophy. And it was very fascinating. This scholar said the philosophy that propelled the Holocaust was Darwinism. And he explained it in great detail, how he had traced this back. And he said, like, before Darwinism, people's view of life was predominantly influenced in the Western world by Christianity. And there was the idea that life is sacred. Everything belongs to God. And everything, has a place in creation. And because everything belongs to God, because life is sacred, everything should be honored. And it's very interesting. He was saying that, the way people were relating even to nature, was very different. But then with Darwinism, we have this idea that life originates from matter. And we have this idea of that there is lower and higher forms of life. And then we also have this idea that there's higher and lower forms of human beings. And it's very interesting, we even see now, we have that mentality very, strongly influencing society. Like animals are considered lower, forms of life than humans, and there's nothing inherently valuable or sacred about them. So what do we do with animals? We just kill them when we feel like it. And it is fascinating what happened on the Holocaust. I know this because I studied histories. The Nazis considered the Jews as the lowest form of humans, and they considered them animals. So that's exactly what they did. They treated them like animals. I remember, reading this when I was there. They transported the Jews on cattle trucks. And then the system that they used, to kill the Jews in the gas chambers was a system based on factory farming, which was designed to kill animals. Now, the irony is, if humanity had never gotten to the point where we considered that just because, the body, the skin of an animal looks different from ours, because of that difference, we have the right to kill it, we could have never got to the stage where we felt like, well, Jews are animals, we kill animals, so we can just kill them. So we see that actually this consciousness of identifying, others on the base of their external appearance is very dangerous, because what happens if I say, I have affection for this person because they are my mother. I have affection for this person because they are from my race. They are from my country. They are from my religion. The moment I do that, I exclude others. I have affection for this person, but then I'm antagonistic towards another. So we can see how that is actually confining your consciousness. And Krishna consciousness then is the opposite of that. Krishna consciousness, we're expanding our consciousness. That is why in Bhagavad Gita, in the verse, can't remember the exact verse now, but Prabhupada has a verse which he calls the peace formula. And part of that peace formula is that we understand that Krishna is the supreme father and the shelter of all living beings. So when we have that consciousness, it means we are practicing, because we're probably not there quite yet, but we are practicing to see, as Prabhupada says in the purport, soul to soul through the super soul. So then we can start loving our own family members in a different ways, but then also we can go beyond all the boundaries of family, of race, of nationality, even of species, because we see that all forms of discrimination come from this tendency to identify others on the base of their skin or the external body. Racism, sexism. They have one now, the animal rights activists, they called about speciesism. But we can see the root of all of that is not seeing the inherent soul in all living beings, but seeing the external and then only, relating to other beings based on their external form. So, I'm just quickly gonna get back to my notes. So lastly, what I wanted to say, because I'm conscious of time, is that we are striving for this goal. We are striving for pure devotional service. And we are striving to change this material consciousness into a spiritual consciousness. And we know now that even while we're living within this world, if we develop that spiritual consciousness, it completely changes how we relate to others, and it completely changes our experience of this world. But what we need to do that, and Prabhupada also mentions that in the lecture he gave about this verse, is we need the mercy of the Lord. We are striving for pure devotional service. We want to become attracted to Krishna. We want to, like the Ganges, just rushes towards the ocean. We want our desire to just flow towards Krishna. However, that is only possible if we can receive the mercy of the Lord. So this is a nice verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I felt may also inspire us in this regard. And it says, pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activities in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained only by one price that entails greed to obtain it. If it's available somewhere, then one must purchase it immediately. So I was thinking, this is very interesting, this intense greed. I feel it's like a river that flows very, very strongly. Very, very strongly. So we have to cultivate a stronger and stronger desire to reach Krishna. But even to have that desire to reach Krishna, even to have the greed, it requires mercy. And I was thinking about, it's very interesting, because one of the things that helps a river to flow more strongly is when it rains. And we often speak about the rain of mercy. It just comes down. So we can also pray for that. We can pray to receive this rain of mercy. And we know, as devotees, we're all in some way or the other, we're connected to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, which Srila Prabhupada established. And we know that there's actually unlimited amounts of mercy, available within this glorious society that Prabhupada has created. We just have to align ourselves so we can receive this mercy. And then lastly, just one prayer I wanted to conclude with, and I hope this will give us further faith that is possible, because we might feel that, in some or the other way, we're just not qualified. We're not qualified for pure devotional service. Or we might feel that, maybe I know it's the goal, but I just feel that my conditioning is too strong, or I just have too many other desires, or there might be so many things that we might think actually kind of disqualifies us for devotional service. So I think this beautiful little prayer might give us some hope. So it says, where was the hunter Dharma's piety, Durva's maturity, Gajendra's knowledge? Where was Kubja's beauty? Where was Sudharma's wealth? Where was Ugrasena's strength? Lord Madhava is pleased by devotional service and not by material qualification. So maybe for us that are not so familiar with all these stories, Durva was a young boy at the age of 5. He went to meditate in the forest, and he did get the darshan of Vishnu. Gajendra was actually an elephant. So elephants are not known for being the most the most erudite scholars, but Gajendra offered prayers, and he offered a lotus flower with the prayers, and Krishna came to save him, again in the form of Vishnu. Kubja was a hunchback woman who was deformed, But again, she did service. She offered Krishna special oil she was preparing, which she was actually supposed to give to Kamsa. She just offered that to Krishna. Sudharma was a poor brahmana who was so poor that he couldn't even he didn't even have like rice to just feed his family. And Ugrasena was Krishna's, if I remember now correctly, I think it's Krishna's uncle, but he was imprisoned by Kamsa, so he wasn't, strong enough to like protect himself, basically. So we can see that Krishna does not consider, our beauty, our knowledge. Krishna doesn't consider our strength. Krishna doesn't even consider our maturity. The only thing that Krishna is looking for is, are we making that endeavor? Are we, from our position, from where we are at, are we endeavoring, with our at? If we are, then we are candidates for his mercy. So thank you very much, devotees. I hope some of what we shared was inspiring to you, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your comments, your feedback, your corrections, and if anyone has any questions, that would be wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother, for the wonderful presentation of the verse. It's so enlivening, and we're very grateful for having you. I'm sure devotees will come up with their responses, but maybe I'll suspend my own question. I'll come with my question later. When the Prabhu is answers up, he has a question. So Prabhu Prasad, please kindly unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you very much for the class. Very interesting, very loaded, and enlivening. I am fascinated by the area in the purport, I think the third paragraph, which you elucidated, soul to soul through the super soul. It sounded very lyrical, like a rhyme, soul to soul through the super soul. And when you mentioned that the Pandavas were devotees and Queen Kunti is wanting to cut off the skin disease, you want to get rid of the skin disease. So I'm looking in light of, what about grihastas who seemingly are encouraged with the fact that their family members are devotees and they are inspired to carry on with devotional service in that capacity? How can you relate that situation with this soul to soul through the super soul? How can you corroborate them, please?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So I just want to clarify, your question is with regard specifically to grihastas who have this responsibility to take care of their family. How can we understand the question of overcoming the skin disease?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu, for asking that question. I do feel like I'm everyone's daughter here, but for my own purification, I will try and answer the question. But I think it's a very important question, and I was also meditating upon this, and I think there's a couple of important points, and I think one point to realize is that we have to, gradually come to this level of caring for someone because they are, part and parcel of Krishna. But at the same time, we have to be very conscious that it is not, like our philosophy is never not to care for people or neglect people, and that even includes neglecting their, their physical or mental well-being. Because if we look, for instance, at the example of Srila Prabhupada, we saw that he was always very concerned for devotees' physical and mental health. Whenever devotees had any health issues, Prabhupada would say that, you should rest. You should, even many times said, you should, only do a few hours of service, and in some cases he even said only chant and read. You can stop all other service, chant and read, but look after your health. So we see that the devotee, does not have no regard for others' well-being, but ultimately he has a different vision. Prabhupada would say to devotees, take care of your body because you are dear to Krishna and you have to still at least chant. And if you completely neglect your body and your health, you can't chant, you can't remember Krishna. So it's like we, as devotees, we still have to actually take the greatest care of our family members, especially if they are devotees, because if they are devotees, it's like our service to take care of them. I mean, even if they're not devotees, it's our service to take care of them. But our ultimate motivation for doing so is slightly different. But I would say the tendency to in any way neglect devotees, that I would say is a misunderstanding, and you're actually leaning towards impersonalism if you neglect someone in any way. Because we also see I was reading in Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, I think also the 30th chapter, I was reading that Krishna was saying that the person who takes care, of all living entities and is kind to all living entities is very dear to him. So Krishna makes it very clear that he wants his devotees to be very conscious and to be very sensitive and to be, very conscientious in the way they deal with others. So I think we have to take care, but at the same time, we have to always strive for, moving towards seeing our family members more and more also as parts and parcels of Krishna. But if we are in the Grihastha ashram, we can't just look at our child and say, well, it's a spirit soul, so I don't need to be its mother. We need to play that role of being the mother, correcting the child, looking after the child, educating the child. So it's like we have to, Arjuna has to have the ultimate vision, but fight the battle. If we're in family life, we have to know, but this is the role now. My duty is to act like a father. My duty is to act like a mother. My duty is to act like a daughter. But I'm keeping the ultimate goal always in my vision. I'm always, through being a father, through being a mother, through being a daughter, I'm still aiming. I'm still aiming for that ultimate goal. I hope that answers your question, Prabhu. It's a very important question, but I think they could be much more elaborate and
Thank you very much, Mr. D.
It's a laudable attempt. Very, very grateful. Thank you. It makes a lot of sense.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, Mr. D.
So
we have a question on the chat room. His Holiness Paribhaka Chal Maharaj is asking a question. Paribhaka Maharaj asked, he said, my Dandava Pranam to you, Saradiya Ras, Hare Krishna. You mentioned that Srila Prabhupada has stated in the purport that sometimes the service of the Vaishnavas is considered higher than the service of the Lord, Krishna himself. How can we understand this apparent paradigm?
Right, so thank you, Maharaj, for giving me the opportunity to think about this very important topic. So, how can we understand that service to the Vaishnavas is even higher than service to Lord Krishna himself? So I think if we understand Krishna's relationship with his devotees, we can somehow understand this, because Krishna says that, I'm trying to remember the exact verse, but I think he is saying he is not in the heart of the yogis, he's not where there is recitation of mantra, but where is Krishna? Krishna is always in the heart of his devotees. Like Krishna is, he's in the heart of his devotees, and his devotees is in his heart. So if we think about that, like the heart of Krishna is his devotees, then we realize how dear Krishna's devotees, are to him. And because Krishna's devotees are so dear to him, he's got he's got, I mean, Krishna has affection for himself too, because he's Krishna. It's an interesting dynamic. But Krishna's greatest affection is for his devotees. And because of that, if we serve his devotees, we are serving what is most dear to Krishna. So Prabhupada often uses this analogy that if you wanted to get close to a great personality like a president or a king, of a country, it would be very difficult for an ordinary person to directly approach them. But if you did something, it's like for instance that the Queen of England, she's very fond of her horses. She has been breeding horses for many years, and she has been participating in horse races, etc. And then many years ago actually, there was a person who was a very famous horse trainer called Monty Roberts. So Monty Roberts actually, he didn't make any effort to see the Queen herself, but he was training horses, and at some point in time he was invited to train the Queen's horses. And because the Queen's horses are so dear to the Queen, she met Monty Roberts, although he made no effort to meet the Queen. So, we can see that because the devotees are the heart of Krishna, if we serve the devotees, that will be very much touching, to Krishna. If whatever is very, very dear to Krishna, we show that it's also dear to us, then I think Krishna feels, he feels this connection of us. It's like, if I give this example, if you say you meet someone and you don't know much about them, but then you find out that one of your greatest interests in life, say maybe you have an interest in exotic flowers and you're an exotic flower collector, and you've gone over the whole world collecting exotic flowers, and now say you meet someone on a plane and you don't really have any affection or connection of this person, but then this person just happens to tell to you that they're also into collecting exotic flowers. Immediately you'll feel like a sense of connection, a sense of kinship with this person. Now Krishna, in a much grander way, is the same. When he sees someone has affection for his devotees, Krishna will immediately feel a sense of kinship with that person. So Maharaj, please correct me if that wasn't right, but that is a few words I could speak on that. So I'm just seeing that there is a question on YouTube, so I'm just going to click on the
there is
link.
a question on the YouTube. Emmanuel Kalu first is appreciating your class presentation. Emmanuel Kalu on the YouTube channel says, Hare Krishna, such a nice and sweet class. Then he went further to ask a question. He said, my question is on the word greed.
Yes.
Is greed not purely material quality that is not needed in devotional service?
Thank you so much. That is a very important question. So greed, often when we hear the word greed, we associate with, as this person rightly pointed out, we associate it with like very materialistic consciousness, like we just want. And it's interesting. It often says that if we pursue our desire, if we don't get what we want, we get frustrated and angry. And if we pursue a desire and we get what we want, we become greedy. We want more and more. So what we have to understand is, like Prabhupada pointed out in this verse, that we cannot actually stop, Prabhupada said, like, you cannot stop, he actually called it the symptoms of life. So the soul is always active. And the soul, in essence, is like almost like a drop of desire. It's like the soul can't actually do anything but desire. So at the moment, we might be greedy for many things. But all of those things that we are greedy for, it is fueling our desires to try and be separate from Krishna. But we want to have greed to serve Krishna. We want to have greed for devotional service. So we want to be greedy to love Krishna and to serve Krishna. And you see this sometimes in devotees' lives. Like there's one devotee, very, very advanced in age, and he lives in Bhaktivedanta Manor. And I remember seeing him at the manor, and I've never seen him do anything except chant his rounds, serve devotees or give a class. That's permanently what he does. And he took a lot of service cleaning. And although he's very advanced in age, he would literally go and he would clean the toilets. He would scrub the floors. And one day I spoke to him and I said, Prabhu, you're getting advanced in age, and, can you really continue all the service? And then, he said to me that, as long as I can do service, I am well, I am blessed. And you could see in this person's life, he was so greedy just to do more and more and more service. Basically no time for himself. Either serving the devotees prasadam, either cleaning for the devotees, either chanting his rounds, or either giving a lecture, and then somewhere in between he must have, slept a little bit. So we can see that type of greed is glorious, because that type of greed is in connection of Krishna, and because it's in connection of Krishna, that type of greed is not harming anyone. That type of greed, on the contrary, is inspiring him to serve everyone and to actually support everyone also on their path of devotional service. So we see that's how we can distinguish. If we have greed, that is the normal materialistic greed, it will be harmful to others if we pursue what we are greedy for. If we have greed for devotional service and we pursue it, it should also be uplifting to others in the greatest way. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much for the beautiful answer. Emmanuel is hearing you. It's live on YouTube, so I'm sure he's hearing your answers to his question. Thank you very much. We have 2 other questions on the chat room, but before that, Raja Leela wants to ask a question. So Mother, please can you unmute and ask your question?
My mother wants to ask me a question. I'm getting questions from my mother and my father and my grandfather.
Bible, my sweet Kamania. My sweet Kamania is here. She's on this call in order for us to support you, my dear Saradiya. I wanted to, that question of greed, I wanted to just share a little bit about you and your greed, and how during the time, maybe a year or 2 ago, when the Vaishnavis, the ladies, didn't have so much of a voice in terms of on different platforms, that you created a platform where ladies could actually speak, give classes. And from that platform, I believe you have a following of 40,000 Vaishnavis, or by different people. Now it's not just Vaishnavis, it's so many different people all over the world that are listening to the Vaishnavis. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for making yourself available on the African platform, because I can see that the devotees in Africa are actually, following in that mood of wanting to serve the Vaishnavis. It's just such a beautiful thing. So thank you for getting that all started. We're really grateful. And my question was related. It's such a beautiful class you gave, so many wonderful points that we can just ponder on. However, the one point that I thought that you said that really struck me was I am a servant of Krishna, and that my goal is Krishna, morning, night, always thinking of Krishna. And I was curious, because I'm speaking from my own self. My false ego always want to create separation. My false ego always want to create some way where I am not always thinking of Krishna. So what would you suggest for my false ego?
Hare Krishna, Mata. Thank you very much for the encouragement, and also thank you for the question. The question is, how can we convince the false ego that the false ego should serve Krishna? Because you said we always tend to want to do things separately from Krishna. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm getting your question. Is that the gist of the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll just share my limited realization on the topic. So I was speaking of a friend of mine last week, and we were reading Bhagavad Gita together, and she was saying how she had to confess that often when she reads, Prabhupada's purports, and then he says, like, for instance, a Krishna consciousness person has no other desire but to serve the Lord. She says that she has this like feelings of rebellion, that kind of, arise in her. And I think that is very normal. We all might have these feelings of rebellion arising, like, but why does Krishna have to be the center of everything? Why does Krishna, why does everyone have to like always, consider Krishna all the time? So I was also sharing with her that I can resonate with that that experience of feeling rebellious. But then I said at the same time, we have to, like, for me, when I feel that way, I meditate upon who I really am. And I realize that because we are, as Krishna explains, because we are the little marginal potency, we actually are never going to be independent. We're never going to do things for ourselves. It's that we have to choose. It's like either we're going to be serving Krishna directly, either we're going to surrender to, all right, it's going to be all about Krishna. That is the one option. And then the other option is like, okay, we're gonna try, and we're gonna think we're gonna do things for ourselves, but actually we are not, because we never free. We always, if we're gonna try and pursue our so-called freedom, we're opting for another master. Basically, it's like our decision is not actually, if we understand that we are a marginal potency, that is, not Krishna's internal potency, not Krishna's external potency, but marginal, meaning we can move in between. We understand that our decision is not between having a master, which is Krishna, or being independent and not having a master. It's like having Krishna as a master, or having another master. And that's for me, it's like I really try and meditate upon that. When I am, pursuing my independence, I'm not really independent. I'm just being subordinate to another master. And that another master isn't, the kind and loving master that Krishna is. Because ultimately, if we think, I want to pursue my desires, the question is, where did your desires come from? Are the desires really yours? We all grew up in a certain culture, in a certain society, in a certain environment. And very much so, and even psychologists will say that what we desire is based upon that. So it's actually external. So we become the servant of basically consumerism. We become, the servant of maybe some, even like ideas like, become the servant of the idea that, you need to be a successful businessman, or you become the servant of the idea that you need to be really beautiful, but still you are a servant. You never master. So that is my meditation, which I try and give to my false ego. I hope that in some way answers your question, Mata. But thank you again thank you for asking the question, so I can think about this deeper. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. I think Mother Rajalila, is that okay? You want to make a comment?
No, great. Thank you, my love. I'm going to stay away from the modes of material nature and material energy. Thank you. Haribol.
Thank you very much. We have a question on a hand up, but we have two questions on the chat room. First, Mother Eagle Liz, so I hope I pronounced that name properly, is asking a question. But before I go to that, there's a response from His Holiness Paribik Maharaj to your answer to his question before, and he asked a further question. He said, "Thank you for this valuable and clear conception of the significance of Vaishnava Seva. How is it possible that I can even conceive of offending any Vaishnava, knowing this profound truth?" There's a question mark there, so I think he wants you to comment on that.
Thank you again, Maharaj, for asking the question, so we can all meditate upon this very important important consideration further. And I think the problem is that we forget how dear Vaishnavas are to Krishna. You know, our vision becomes very, very clouded. And again, we get into that, I would say actually, that impersonalist consciousness. I think impersonalism, you know, more than it's like a threat of like, you know, people out there being impersonalist, it's very much a threat, you know, for ourselves, that we have strong impersonalism in our own consciousness, and we're impersonal towards Krishna, but we're also very impersonal towards other devotees and other living beings. And because we have this tendency, we so easily forget the importance of Vaishnavas, but not even the importance of Vaishnavas, like the importance of every living being. Every living being is dear to Krishna. And because we lack that vision, we forget, then, you know, we offend. Because if you think, for instance, if you would meet someone very important, if you would meet the president of your country, you would be very conscious and careful to deal with the president properly, because it would be very prominent in your consciousness, like, this is an important person. Even if you're an ordinary person, you would think, okay, this is the president, I should deal with them properly. But then if we just come into contact with like a person on the street, then we might be very callous, because we don't have that consciousness of this person is very important. But we know that, I think it's Rupa Goswami said that we should meditate upon the fact that all living beings, he's not even saying humans, he's not saying devotees, he's saying all living beings. He said we should meditate upon the fact that all living beings, you know, are considered to be like the feet of Krishna, and we bow down to the feet of Krishna. So even if all living beings are rested at the feet of Krishna, we bow down to those lotus feet. So we should have that same awe and respect to each living being, remembering that they are part and parcel of Krishna, and also dear, very, 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 very dear to Krishna. So I think that is the problem. If we would remember how dear Vaishnavas are, then we would not be offensive. But we forget. We forget again and again how dear Vaishnavas are to Krishna. So
Thank you.
Satisfies
Thank you,
Lord.
Mother. Yeah, our next question is from Igle Lish. She's asking a question. She said, Hare Krishna, I like the analogy of the water system, and on the topic of bodies of water. I was just thinking this morning how trying to satisfy our material desire is like drinking salt water, and our taste will never be quenched, but will be left even tastier with our throats burning. And the only way to achieve eternal happiness is by drinking from a pure body of water, acting in the mode of goodness. I think it's more like a comment.
Yes, I think she made a comment. It's a beautiful comment. Thank you. She always has very profound realization. She's a very deep thinker, Iglesias. So thank you for sharing, Iglesias. There's one more prayer I wanted to share, which is also has an analogy of water. So I'll share this prayer, and I hope you'll like it, Iglesias. So it's from Sri Kavirath, and it says, "O Lord, I do not pray for heavenly happiness. I do not even aspire for liberation. Simply let day after day the nectar of Krishna's transcendental pastimes flood my ears." So that is the pure water that we want to drink, that will quench all our desires. It's the transcendental pastimes of Krishna.
Thank you, Saradiya. There is still another response from the YouTube channel. Saradiya Prabhu's hand is up, but before that, let me quickly give attention to this attendant on the YouTube platform. There is one, Rahul Kumar. So he's asking, he said, Mom, can you speak in Hindi? She wants to know whether you can speak in Hindi.
Unfortunately, I cannot speak Hindi, and that is unfortunate. But I do hope that in the future I will learn more Sanskrit. But it seems that they can speak English. So if they would like to speak with me, I would be very happy to hear from them if they write to me in English.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for that response to that. So our next question is from Saradiya Prabhu. Saradiya Prabhu, please can you unmute and ask a question?
Hare Krishna, Saradiya Matadi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay,
Thank you for
so
being
much.
here.
Thank you so much for the class. I really enjoyed your analogy. I was distracted here and there, but I heard most of the parts. I don't know. My question has to do with independence. There was the head of state in one of the African countries, in Ghana, President Idi Amin. He was a very brutal president. And he used to say that everyone has the freedom to say whatever, but your freedom ends at the end of whatever you say. In other words, you truly have no freedom. So comparing that to Krishna, I'm not trying to say Krishna is like Idi Amin. Idi Amin was like a demon. But it really says that we have independence. Why does he punish us for whatever we do? Because whatever action we perform, if we perform wrong action, he punishes us. And then he turns around to say, you have freedom to do whatever. So do we truly have independence? And if Krishna is telling us we have independence, what does that mean? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Saradiya Prabhu, thank you again for the question. I'm very grateful for the devotees' questions. It's really giving me opportunity to reflect much deeper. So I think I was struggling a little bit to hear, but I think the essence of that question is, what does it mean that we have independence? Because Krishna says we have independence, but it seems that then we also are punished in the form maybe of karmic reactions for our independence, or decisions that we make independently. So I hope that was the essence of the question.
Yes, Mataji,
Yes,
that's the
okay.
question.
Yes.
He says we have freedom, but at the same time, when we use the freedom, we get punished.
Yes. So I think it's an interesting, very philosophical question, and from my understanding is that yes, we have independence, but our independence is not unlimited. It's actually, Prabhupada says, is minute independence. So it is true that, as I said before, like the soul is basically like it's a drop of desire, and actually in the material world we're not even acting. It's like we desire, and then it's facilitated, by the three modes of material nature. And in the spiritual world we desire, and then actually it's facilitated by the internal potency of Krishna. So we can see we only desiring, and then it is facilitated in some other way. So we have independence in the sense that we can decide what we want to desire, and then consequently, according to what we desire, certain actions will follow. But what we cannot control is the outcome of our desires. And I think this is a very, very deep point, because often, people become very resentful in their lives if life is somehow not giving them what they wanted, and they have this feeling of like life owes me something better, or my family, my community, or God owes me something better. But we've got to understand that any situation we found ourselves in, we did choose indirectly through actions in our past, whether it's more recent past or very distant past as a past life. But the problem is that when we choose to act, most of the time we are very unaware of what is going to be the consequence of our actions. we choose to act in a certain way, and in that moment we just choose because we have certain desires, but we cannot foresee, what our desires and our actions are going to create in the future. So I think that is why it is minute independence, like, because what we get in the end in the material world is very much dependent on, the laws of karma, but we are not in control of the laws of karma. We don't have so much dependence that we make the laws. It's like if we think about people say playing football on a football field, we're very similar. We're in this arena now our arena which we're in is the material universe, and it's like this football field, and on this football field, we can decide, okay, are we gonna run forwards or backwards or sideways? We can decide how far we're gonna run. We can decide if we're gonna kick the ball or pass the ball on. So we've got some decisions, but we can't go off the field. And also because we're playing football, we can't, for instance, in football, you can't, I think one of the rules of football is you can't touch the ball with your hands unless you're the goalie. So you can't start shooting hoops like you were playing basketball. You're playing football. So, you're limited. And if you're going to break certain rules, you're going to get called off the field. You're going to receive penalties. So that is very much, our situation as well. Yes, we've got independence, but the independence is limited by the field of action, which is the material world. And at the same time, it is limited by the game, we are playing, which is our current life. Like I can't decide, for instance, I would like to fly, with my natural body. It's just not an option for me. And at the same time, we have to, if we break the rules, like the rules of the game, there's going to be reactions, and that is like the laws of karma. So I hope that makes sense. And I would just close by saying it's related to Mother Raj Leela's point. The false ego, I think the false ego convinces us that we have much more independence than we really do. The false ego, it's like, it creates these fantasies, for us, which we feel we can pursue, which aren't really options in reality. Hare Krishna. I hope that answers the question, Saradiya Prabhu.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it did.
Yes, thank you very much, Mataji, for the beautiful answers to this beautiful question. At the point in time, I started thinking like I was listening to a football coach. The analogy about the football pitch was so wonderful. Thank you very much.
I think I played football.
You play football?
Srila Prabhupada played football as a child, and he said he was the goalie because he didn't like to run around very much. So he was content being the goalie, which we didn't have to do so much running. But yes, Prabhupada did play football as a little boy.
Thank you. I just read one more comment on the YouTube channel. Keshava Prabhu is just a comment. I think he was responding to one of your statement on some of the analogies you gave. He said, Keshava Prabhu said, where's his comment? He said, is referring to a title of an old class given by His Holiness Bhakti Swami Krishna Pad. The mind is envious of the soul. Yeah, there's a class that Gurudev gave one of his lectures, and the title of the lecture is "The Mind is the Enemy of the Soul." It's envious of the soul. Sorry, the mind is envious of the soul. So while you were explaining about the soul and the material body, intellectual activities, I think he was responding to that. He was remembering that class. So he gave a comment on the YouTube channel. So I'm just reading that for you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I definitely want to look up that class of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. He's always our teacher, and yeah, in every way enlightening us. So I think maybe there's no more comments and questions.
There's one more comment, just a comment. Kusbo Basan wrote on the chat box, dependence on Krishna is real independence. I think she was just commenting based on your answers to Saradiya Prabhu's question.
Yes, I think Bhakti Tirtha Swami, I'm trying to remember the exact words, so I'm not going to give the exact quote, but I'm going to paraphrase. But I think he said, the highest freedom is, I think, not surrender, he used a stronger word. He said something like slavery or servitude to the absolute truth. So that is the highest freedom. The highest freedom is if we can be slaves to the absolute truth, which we know is Krishna. So I really like that. So I thought just to conclude, some point which I didn't get to share earlier was that Prabhupada in his lecture on this verse, he mentioned actually that, what Queen Kunti is desiring, what she's expressing in this verse is she's desiring pure devotional service. And then Prabhupada was saying, pure devotional service is when the only desire is like, how can I please Krishna? And then Prabhupada said that the perfection of that is seen in the gopis. So we should also meditate upon the service, of the gopis and the mood of the gopis and how they serve Krishna. So here's one short little verse from Sripad Yavali, which I think can also inspire us and help us to meditate upon the love of the gopis. So the verse is, when the beautiful-eyed girls of Raj saw Lord Krishna, they wished all their senses were eyes, and when they heard the waves of music from his flute, they wished all their senses were ears. So I thought that is a very, very beautiful verse. Maybe I'll read it just one more time because it's so beautiful. When the beautiful-eyed girls of Raj saw Lord Krishna, they wished all their senses were eyes, and when they heard the waves of music from his flute, they wished all their senses were ears. That's Sripad Yavali, verse number 156. So I think that is a beautiful point for us to end on. We can see that what we spoke about earlier, that transcendental greed for Krishna in the mood of the gopis, and I'm praying that we will all also develop that transcendental greed, so that our desire to serve Krishna and to love Krishna will flow, as Queen Kunti prayed, as ferociously as the Ganges flows to the sea without any diversion to anyone else. Let our devotion, our desire, just flow to Krishna. So thank you so much, dear devotees.
Thank you so much, Mati, for the nice class. Beautiful, beautiful class. And I think a lot of people are also watching on the YouTube channel and very pleased with your class. We thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again in a very short time. So at this point, since there are no more questions, I think we will bring the class to an end for today. So I will request all of the devotees to please kindly unmute. Let us loudly chant a powerful Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to appreciate Mother Saradiya Rasa for the wonderful
Hare
class.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol.
Very much.
Thank you so much, dear devotees. So last little prayer, since we're speaking about prayer, for us and in glorification of all of you. I shared this verse of Maharaj as well earlier. Some are inclined to speculative knowledge, others are inclined to fruits of work. We are inclined to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord's servants. Srila Madhava Saraswati. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Salika Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Salika Prabhu. Salika Prabhu, can you hear me? Hare Krishna, Salika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dr. George.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you, Ganga Prasad, and